AITA for walking out of my own birthday dinner because of what my family said to me? 24F, never thought I'd be the kind of person to post on here, but after what happened on my birthday, I genuinely don't know if I'm in the wrong anymore. My family seems to think I am, and when everyone around you is saying the same thing, it messes with your head. For context, I'm the oldest daughter. I have two younger siblings, my sister Emily, 21F, and my brother Jake, 18M. Growing up, my parents always liked to say they treated us equally, but anyone who actually lived in our house could tell that wasn't true. Emily was the golden child. Jake was the baby. And I was the responsible one. From as early as I can remember, I was expected to help. Help with chores, help with babysitting, help with errands, help with emotional support. If something went wrong, I was asked why I didn't prevent it. If something went right, it was what families do. When Emily forgot her homework, it was she's stressed. When Jake broke something, it was boys will be boys. When I made a mistake, it was we expected better from you. I don't think my parents were intentionally cruel. I honestly believe they thought they were being fair. They just assumed I could handle more, so they gave me more. And then even more. As time went on, I started cooking dinner 3 nights a week, driving Emily to activities, helping Jake with homework, and still being told I needed to set a better example. I wasn't allowed to complain, because that would make me ungrateful. Whenever I tried to bring it up, my mom would say, "You're just more mature." My dad would say, "We trust you." But trust started to feel a lot like pressure. I moved out at 18 for college, and thought distance would fix things. It didn't. If anything, it made the expectations worse. I was now the independent one, which meant I was supposed to be flexible, accommodating, and always available. If Emily needed money, I was asked to help her out. If Jake needed a ride, I was expected to rearrange my schedule. If my parents were stressed, I was the one they vented to. No one ever asked if I was okay. Still, I kept trying. I wanted peace. I wanted approval. I wanted just once to feel like I wasn't being evaluated on how useful I was. That brings me to my birthday. Birthdays in my family were complicated. Emily's birthdays were always events. Parties, themes, decorations, posts on social media about how proud my parents were of her. Jake's birthdays were loud and fun, centered around whatever he was into that year. Mine were quieter, not ignored, but not celebrated either. Usually a family dinner, maybe a cake, and a card that said something like, "We're proud of the woman you've become." Which sounds nice, but always felt generic. This year was my 24th birthday, and my mom suggested we go out to dinner at a restaurant she liked. I didn't love it, but I agreed. I didn't want to seem difficult. A week before my birthday, Emily called me crying because she was overwhelmed with work. I spent over an hour on the phone comforting her. At the end of the call, she casually mentioned she might be late to my birthday dinner. I laughed it off, but it stung. The day before my birthday, my dad asked if I could help Jake practice for his driving test before dinner. I reminded him it was my birthday. He said, "It won't take long." I agreed anyway. I told myself not to expect too much. That's always been my coping mechanism. Keep expectations low so you can't be disappointed. Still, a part of me hoped this year would be different. That maybe, just once, the focus would be on me. I wore a dress I liked. I did my makeup. I even brought a small gift for my mom because her birthday was coming up and I didn't want her to feel overshadowed. We met at the restaurant around 7 p.m. The restaurant was warm and bustling, full of families and groups celebrating the weekend. I tried to focus on the small sense of excitement I had brought with me, hoping that maybe tonight would feel different, that maybe this year my birthday wouldn't be swallowed up by everyone else. But as soon as we sat down, the familiar pattern began. The conversation completely ignored me. My parents asked Emily about, and her friends. Jake rattled on about his upcoming driving test. My mom and dad discussed their work stress and finances. I tried to contribute, commenting on Emily's internship or asking a simple question about Jake's lessons, but my words were brushed aside before I could even finish a sentence. I felt invisible, as I always had. It was that same ache I had carried my entire life, The unspoken expectation that I would always be the quiet observer, the one who accommodated everyone else while my own life was background noise. Then, almost casually, my mom said, "We're so grateful for how you turned out. You never needed as much attention." Her gaze landed on me, and the words were supposed to be a compliment. Emily, never missing an opportunity to jab with humor, added with a grin, "Yeah, you never really cared about birthdays anyway." She laughed lightly, expecting the comment to pass as a joke. I forced a smile, but inside, my chest tightened. My hands felt cold, and my throat hurt as the words sunk in. For a moment, I couldn't even respond. I just sat there, trying to keep my emotions contained, wishing I could disappear from the conversation entirely. Jake noticed my discomfort and, in his casual, teasing tone, said, "She's just joking, don't be too sensitive." That was it. That tiny comment, meant to soothe or excuse Emily's remark, felt like salt in an open wound. For years, my feelings had been dismissed as too sensitive or overreacting. For years, the fact that I even had feelings had been treated as a flaw. And tonight, on my birthday, it had happened again. I took a deep breath, my hands gripping the edge of the table. I wanted to make them understand, wanted them to see that I had spent years quietly supporting everyone else, wanted them to notice that for once, it was my turn. "I do care about birthdays," I said, my voice trembling but determined. "And I feel like tonight, like every year, no one even notices me. It's always about everyone else. And it hurts." The words hung in the air. I expected, I hoped for anyone to acknowledge how I felt. But instead, my dad leaned back, shaking his head slightly, and said calmly, "This is exactly why we don't make a big deal out of your birthday. You always make things awkward." The table went silent. Not a word, not a laugh, not even the low murmur of casual chatter from surrounding tables could fill the sudden void. I stared at him for a long moment, feeling something inside me snap completely. Every year of swallowed hurt, every birthday minimized, every moment my feelings were treated as a nuisance, it all crystallized into one sharp, undeniable truth. They weren't going to see me. They weren't going to hear me. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. I grabbed my purse and left the money for my meal on the table. I didn't argue. I didn't explain further. I just walked out. The cool night air hit me like a shock, and for the first time that evening, I felt a flicker of relief mixed with the ache of abandonment. As I stepped outside, the noise of the city seemed louder, alive, free. Meanwhile, I felt both liberated and utterly alone. My phone buzzed almost immediately, Emily texting, Jake calling, my mom leaving a message, but I ignored everything. No words could make them understand how it felt to be invisible in your own life, dismissed even when you finally tried to speak. I walked without direction, letting the city streets absorb my frustration, my anger, my heartbreak. I thought about everything that had led me here, the invisible labor, the constant expectations, the quiet suppression of my own needs. I realized that this wasn't just tonight. It was a lifetime of being unseen. And even though I felt guilty, even though part of me wondered if I had overreacted, I knew deep down I had done the only thing I could. I had stood up, not just from the table, but for myself, finally. Update. I barely remember the walk back to my apartment that night. The city lights blurred around me, the cool air sharp against my skin, and every step felt heavy and light at the same time. I was free from the restaurant, from their words, from the suffocating expectations. But I was also burdened because for the first time, I truly understood the depth of how invisible I had been my entire life. Once I got inside my apartment, I sank onto the couch and just stared at the ceiling. The walls were quiet. The city noises outside faded into a background hum. I thought about the dinner, the way they had dismissed me, and the years it reflected, the years I had quietly carried the emotional and practical weight of the family without acknowledgement. And then it hit me. Nothing, absolutely nothing I did, had made them see me. They refused to acknowledge my feelings, my needs, or even my existence as someone separate from their expectations. I had always been the responsible one, the easy one, the quiet one, roles that had been assigned to me before I even knew how to speak. I picked up my phone, my fingers shaking slightly. I blocked my mom, my dad, Emily, and Jake. No calls, no texts, no notifications. For once, I needed silence. I needed space to breathe without the constant reminder that my feelings were inconvenient, unwelcome, or irrelevant. In the following weeks, I fell into a routine: work, come home, eat, sleep, repeat. At first, it felt hollow. There was loneliness, yes, but also a strange comfort in the boundaries I had created. I realized I no longer had to bend my life around the expectations of people who would never truly see me. Time passed. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, the absence of me in their lives began to register. My parents called, texted, and even showed up at my apartment one evening. I stood by the window, heart hammering, unsure if I should let them in. After a long pause, I decided I would. I opened the gate, letting them step inside. They looked nervous, hesitant. I sat back on my couch, waiting. My mom started, We wanted to talk. We're worried about you. I listened quietly, expecting the usual dismissal. And, of course, it came. Emily and Jake joined in, with little comments about me overreacting, and my parents subtly implying that maybe I was taking things too personally. That's when I stood. I walked to the door, opened it wide, and said clearly, You should leave. And don't come back until you're ready to really listen. The room went silent. My parents' expressions shifted from surprise to guilt. They murmured apologies, hesitant, unsure of how to navigate this moment. I didn't respond immediately. I told them, I need 5 minutes of silence. No words, no interruptions. Just listen. After the silence, I took a deep breath and began. I told them everything. The years of emotional labor, the unnoticed sacrifices, the constant expectation to put everyone else first. I told them how birthdays felt like a reminder that my life and feelings didn't matter. I told them about the times Emily joked at my expense, Jake called me too sensitive, and my parents dismissed my concerns. I spoke about how it had built up over the years, how the pattern of invisibility and invalidation had left me exhausted, angry, and resentful. They listened. They didn't interrupt. And when I finished, there were tears in my mother's eyes, my father's jaw tight, Emily looking down, and Jake shifting uncomfortably. My words had broken through, just a little, enough for them to understand the weight I had been carrying. My parents nodded slowly, their voices trembling as they promised they would change, for the better, for me, for our family. They didn't have all the answers, but they finally admitted that they had been wrong to dismiss my feelings. Emily and Jake didn't say much, but the tension in the room had shifted. They weren't fully apologetic yet, but they had seen me in a way they hadn't before. They left shortly after, and I closed the door behind them. I felt a strange combination of relief and exhaustion. I had finally stood up for myself. I had been seen at least a little, and I had protected the boundaries I had needed for so long. The next morning, I went to work as usual, but something inside me had changed. I started putting effort into talking to other people, forming genuine friendships outside of my family. I went to movies with friends, tried new restaurants, and even joined a small book club. I felt lighter, freer, like I had finally claimed the right to a life that wasn't just about accommodating everyone else. For the first time in years, I felt like I was living my own life, and not the one everyone else had mapped out for me. I still loved my family in my own way, but I no longer measured my worth by their approval or attention. And for the first time, I realized that freedom wasn't just about leaving the dinner table, it was about reclaiming myself entirely. Update. For the first time in years, I was living on my own terms. I was learning to say no without guilt. I was learning that my happiness was valid. And I was beginning to see the first glimmers of a life that wasn't dictated by the constant expectation of others. It started small. My parents texted me one evening, as they often did, with a question about helping Emily move some furniture. Before, I would have rearranged my entire day, without hesitation. But now I paused. I looked at the text and replied simply, I can't today. I have plans. And I didn't feel guilty. Not a twinge. The next day, they asked me to drive Jake to an appointment. Again, I said no, citing my own schedule. I felt my chest lift a little. Each refusal wasn't just a boundary, it was a reclaiming of my time, my energy, my life. And with each refusal, I realized that saying no didn't make me a bad daughter or sister. It made me human. I also started doing things purely because I wanted to. I bought myself a small potted plant and tended to it every morning, enjoying the quiet routine. I joined a painting class, something I had loved as a teenager but abandoned when I had no time. I started going out to cafes alone, sipping coffee while watching people walk by. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of ownership over my own days. Friends noticed the change almost immediately. I was more present, more confident. I laughed more freely, spoke my mind more often, and didn't apologize for enjoying my life. It felt strange at first, like stepping into a space I didn't think I deserved, but the more I embraced it, the more natural it became. It was at a bookshop, of all places, that I met him. He was charming. We struck up a conversation, talking about literature, travel, and odd quirks we noticed in people. He was attentive without being intrusive, funny without trying too hard, and sincere without pretension. By the end of the evening, he had asked if I'd like to grab coffee sometime. That was the start of something I hadn't allowed myself in a long time: dating. Our first date was simple. As we spent more time together, I found myself opening up about my life, my family, my boundaries, and my newfound independence. And he didn't flinch. He listened, genuinely, and offered support without judgment. Meanwhile, back at home, things were slowly changing. My parents and Emily seemed to recognize that I wasn't revolving my life around them anymore. They still reached out, still asked for favors, still tried their old patterns, but now I could refuse without guilt. One evening, my mom called. "I was hoping you could help Emily with some party preparations this weekend." I smiled politely, feeling calm. "I can't this weekend. I have plans with friends." A pause. "Oh, okay." I realized I could support them without losing myself, and that understanding gave me a quiet joy. Emily tried too, awkwardly. She asked me to join her for lunch one day, and I agreed, not out of obligation but because I genuinely wanted to see her. The conversation was different. There was effort on her part, she apologized for past jokes, and I felt the shift. They were trying, but I didn't make my life about their improvement anymore. I had more important things: my friends, my work, my hobbies, and yes, my boyfriend. And then there was Jake. I noticed he was changing in a way I hadn't expected. He started treating me with genuine respect, checking in, and being considerate in ways he never had before. One weekend, he came over unexpectedly. I opened the door, and he handed me a small, neatly wrapped box. "I got this for you," he said, looking nervous. I opened it to find a perfume I had casually mentioned liking months ago. "Jake, you didn't have to do this." "I wanted to," he said quietly. "I'm sorry, really." For the first time in years, I felt a wave of warmth toward him. He wasn't perfect, but he was trying, really trying, and that mattered more than anything. "Thank you, Jake," I said, smiling genuinely. "It means a lot that you're thinking about my feelings." From that day, our relationship changed. He started saving money to treat me thoughtfully, listened more, and respected my boundaries. The dynamic that had once been frustrating and exhausting slowly became cooperative and positive. My mental health improved in parallel. I started sleeping better, laughing more, and finally feeling proud of how far I had come. Months passed, and my life took on a rhythm that was wholly my own. I went out with friends to movies, dinners, and weekend trips. I dated, laughed, argued playfully, and shared experiences without guilt. I set boundaries with my family firmly but lovingly, allowing them to improve without allowing their past behavior to control me. Jake's small gestures, Emily's awkward but sincere attempts at improvement, and even my parents' hesitant steps toward better communication, these were all positive. But they weren't the center of my life anymore. I had other priorities, other sources of happiness that I could nurture. My boyfriend and I planned trips together. I laughed with friends late into the night. I started volunteering for causes I cared about. I felt a sense of agency, of freedom, of joy I had never experienced before. And the best part? I knew I didn't have to shrink to fit anyone's expectations, and I didn't have to apologize for valuing myself. Sitting on my balcony, looking at the city lights, I thought back to that fateful birthday dinner. The pain, the anger, the heartbreak, it had all led me here. To boundaries, to self-respect, to joy, to a life where I could be myself, unapologetically. I realized that happiness wasn't something that could be given to me by others. It was something I had to claim for myself. And once I did, I discovered that life became richer, fuller, more vibrant. I had family who were learning, friends who were present, a partner who valued me, and a sense of self-worth I had never known. I was free and I was happy, truly deeply happy.